Circles. Welcome back to another episode of the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast. Today we're talking about the episode 17 of the second season. It's Knives. But of course, before we start with the actual episode, we go in with another introduction question. And today we thought it's a bit more episode related because we thought, okay, which kind of dueling hobby, pastime, club would you like to do or did you do in your past? So who wants to start?
Well, I have nothing like that really because I don't like this kind of competition sports and things like that. So the closest thing was that I ever do like that is playing chess. Of course, I always win. Yeah, so that's it for me.
Just for the opportunity of collecting eclectic chess pieces, that's a very good choice. I think this would also be my first choice. After that, probably something like backgammon or mahjong, just more classic board games to go into. And when I think of board games and kind of just the vibe that the dueling club of Londo and Ursa gives throughout this episode, I have to think of our board game Newton, which kind of emphasizes this. Are a bunch of 19th century like wannabe natural philosophers trying to one-up each other with what exciting new bug they found and stuff like that. So that kind of lettering back and forth would also be something that I enjoy. Maybe playing chess via letters as well. Just the most obtuse kind of competition there is.
Okay, you two perfectly evaded the physical part of this question. And the original in this series, I actually did some physical dueling parts, quite literally. When I was 17, 18, I got into a fencing club, let's say it like that, for a few years, but it wasn't the competition, it was more the activity itself that was interesting for me. Right now, I would also go for something more physical because, I don't like this feeling of feeling stupid. And therefore, and of course, I need to go outside a bit more and do something for my health. Therefore, I would go also into something physical, like maybe I don't know, kickboxing or something like that, but not going actually in with someone. I would just want to hit some bags and stuff, not actual people, because I totally could not do this. The only time I endure other people is really, really on a highly accidental level. I'm first in line with this, but my partner has.
I mean, that's the problem. I don't like this feeling of being weaker than someone or of being slower than someone. So when I want to move, I take super long walks. I'm really like this kilometer-long walking people we are. And I like going jogging, but I would never ever want to kind of physically be weaker or slower. I have a big problem with that. So yeah.
Face it, sports in school is doing a really good job of getting all the interesting parts and the enthusiasm that you might have in this direction to completely kill it.
Yeah.
Therefore, we have this special thing in Germany that is especially in the beginning of school. Bundesjugendspiele. There's no translation for this, but for everyone who doesn't know this, it's horrible. It's rating.
Almost as bad as honor duels to the death among the rich families of the Republic. Yes.
Yes, certainly. But before we stray further off the topic, let's go back to the episode Knives. And, there are basically two big things happening. First is Sheridan gets to know that there is something on Babylon 5 that is called the Triangle because there's some crazy stuff happening, but no one really knows what, and nothing to really scientifically prove there. People going missing, stuff like that. And Sheridan is going in there with like a little child, like, oh my gosh, there's something to explore for me, which, as he explains, is something he has done from a really young age on. And yeah, well, ends up in a difficult situation. Again, no surprise there. And yeah, well, Londo and is getting a visit from really old friend that results in a duel, in a quite deathly duel. And yeah, I guess that is all we really have to say at this point about this episode. So my first impression is quite mixed feelings. I really like the Londo plot here because it gives more background to Centauri, to the culture, the people there, and also about Londo himself, how he grew up, and actually about his emotional and ethical situation right now. But the whole Sheridan plot is quite boring. Or really, it's highly unnecessary to me because apart from little tidbits like this information that you like exploring abandoned places and stuff like that as a child, there is not much, or at least I didn't see much there that kind of supports the story, and it's also not overall interesting, entertaining, funny. There's nothing I can really get out of this second plot. Therefore, this whole episode felt a bit empty to me, since there is this two plot lines and one is a bit empty. So what do you think?
Do these feelings match yours?
Sorry.
Do you also have an alien inside?
Well, a little bit. I have to say that it's so embarrassing to keep saying that at this moment, but I did not have any strong memories of that episode, to be honest. So it was just...
I understand. I think without my notes, I would have been lost here right now.
Yeah, it was just like this background noise. And I think when I watched that episode for the very first time, it was just like these one-time adventures that I remember from watching Star Trek a lot. So even when we had the Centauri plot with the duel, I didn't even remember what was happening, because for me it was just like one of those episodes where you are somewhere in the galaxy, and then I think it really felt for me like when you are somewhere and suddenly Klingons show up, and then you have their politics and it has no impact and they leave. But I mean, here you have information that you can link interestingly to things that happen later or things that have already happened. You just have to do it. But yeah, it was a bit like this, okay, station background noise, but it didn't leave an impact at all.
I think, we agreed on this. This feels a little bit like a lost Next Generation plot from Star Trek, where the entire idea of this creature and just something that comes out of a weird space-time rift is so different from anything that we usually see on Babylon 5, and it kind of feels out of place the entire time. Personally...
Yeah, I mean, because you just said that it's so untypical. It really is like searching for a way to remind the viewer, hey, we had Babylon 4, and hey, there is still something, but they just didn't know another way to put it forward. Like, here, there is still a mystery, I promise.
I mean, personally, I would have almost preferred it if there wasn't anything in the triangle, if this was just an episode where, maybe Garibaldi doesn't let Sheridan explore this part of the station alone, and you get just, little snippets of them going exploring on Babylon 5, and Sheridan could get excited about, oh, this is just like that time the Vorlon showed me, a moment of perfect beauty. Come on, Garibaldi, let's crawl into this tight space and see if there's monks singing there. And Garibaldi kind of having to reckon that this commander of his is involved in some weird spiritual stuff. And then maybe we could have learned a little bit more about their chemistry, and Garibaldi going a bit into his background, like, oh, this reminds me of being back on Io and doing investigations there. Something a little bit more character-driven, maybe would have been nice, because this felt very much like, oh, we have one part of the episode where we learn about the Centauri, so the other one needs to be action. So now there's a pterodactyl in the captain's quarters and he starts shooting at the walls, and that's just, yeah, it's an interesting concept, but I really don't know what it's doing in this show at this point. It's a bit confusing.
Maybe that's the perfect moment to start with the Sheridan. Well, the how it starts is quite interesting, because you kind of expect this. Okay, Sheridan is going in there, exploring, finding interesting stuff or something crazy, something, like a mystery. And then he goes in there and, oh yeah, there is someone lying down there. It's an alien. It's hurt. It's dead. I'm not sure. Oh, it's attacking me. And yeah, then he's calling for help. And yeah, congratulations, the alien you found is dead. Therefore, the interaction might have been just some how Franklin phrases it, like a zombie attack on gas.
Yes.
Yeah, and then this I mean, the moment this attack happens, you as a watcher already see, okay, there is something, and the first time Sheridan has this let's call it an episode, yeah, where it's like seeing things that aren't there. It's like, oh yeah, what might have happened there? What a big mystery. It's really no surprise. And even before Gary Bowles shows up, and yeah, we have the autopsy, and it says he killed himself. It's not really not much of a big, interesting thing you get to know. There's at no time there's really something where you wonder, okay, what is happening here? And it's not like you have some sort of plot twist that goes into a completely different direction than you would have imagined. I mean, they sort of try it with this, oh, it's an alien being that is so different, no one can scan it or whatever. I have to bring it back home.
Yeah. I mean, one of the fun things about doing this podcast is, getting to learn my co-hosts better. And one thing that I very much noticed with you, Meike, is that you are very quick to look for the mystery and find something that is interesting there. And usually when that happens and the mystery isn't very good, which is quite often the case on Babylon 5, there are at least other thematic things that we can latch onto and talk about. But this is really a plot that wants to live on the mystery that is established, and because that kind of falls flat, I can very quickly see where the interest is lost, and this doesn't offer me any alternative take to like push towards you and say, hey, maybe this is an interesting take on it, because there's not that much there.
There's nothing that hooks you, that gives you a reason to keep watching this kind of plot. It's just like, okay, we have to pass the time. I mean,
which is
the Cantina band in there playing the same song over and over again, and it would have more impact than this plotline that's presented here.
I mean, obviously, sets and such are a constant constraint on a production like this, but it would have been great to use this opportunity of the triangle to just explore the station a little more, because we have seen that people like the Soul Hunter used like secret alleyways and stuff that nobody else knew about. Just recently we had them hiding the doctor in downtown, this like welded off area where nobody ever goes. We have places like Docking Bay 13 where the Vorlon ship is in. So there are so many mentions throughout this series of the weird places on the station that we usually never get to see. This for me, like if I remember this episode on paper, this for me would be the hook, right? Like let's go and do a little bit of urban legend exploring. And I also like that this would be fitting for Sheridan to kind of enjoy this like low stakes mystery where he doesn't have to figure out who killed the president. He just has to figure out why this cargo box went missing. And the fact that this is, like you described, immediately just, oh, there's a dead body here. I guess I just have to call the police now. Like, there is no fun investigation here. This is, I don't know, like, I'm trying to go, urban exploration, and I just find a dead body. Like, there's this, that kind of takes the fun out of it. Now it's just a serious thing that I have to deal with. That's not good.
I mean, the point is, what do we have in this plot that is new, that gives us something? The only thing I can find is that Sheridan now gets the information, hey, B4 is kind of there and then not, and we saved the people that were on B4. And here you have the information because, Garibaldi secretly made a copy that of the only information that existed because came around and collected everything there was. That's everything I can find in here. It's like there's no interesting or overall interesting conversation between the characters. Of course, they try to make a few funny lines or put a few funny lines in there, but it's nothing that is long-lasting. You go out there quite empty-handed.
And I mean, that kind of puts it back to the other point that I mentioned in Alex's first impression. They wanted to remind the people that before was still there and that there was this big mystery. And also they had to kind of let Sheridan in on it because they still have a captain who doesn't know or a commander who doesn't know. So I think that was really the reason of, okay, now we have to write something about this so that we can put it back on the table.
But honestly, for me, it would have been more fun if Sheridan figured this out on his own. Like, let him have, the crazy blackboard in his quarters where he pulls a red string across and says no. But at this stage, like, randomly a bunch of shuttles appeared here and there was a bunch of people, like, going back from Babylon 5 that shouldn't have been there. There's no record of them ever arriving here. There must have been the crew from Babylon 4 that you recruited. And then the government took over stuff because that's a big part of his character. That's what he does, collecting mysteries. And so the fact that this massive thing happened and he just kind of has to be pushed onto it by Garibaldi instead of learning of it himself feels like a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yes, but
would have been, just quick idea, if there would have been someone on B5 that was previously on B4, like the way he found out with Morden, of course it would be the same schematics, but overall he could have done the detective job himself, and therefore the way might have been quite more interesting to see than what we have here, because he gets everything served.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think it would have been problematic to put Sheridan in such a plot, because with Sheridan we have this person who is open for all of these weird conspiracies that we are fighting for a living at the moment, actually, kind of. So he is open for all of these conspiracies, he's open for all of these spiritual things, which is an important character feature that we need in this character, definitely. But then if you put him into this conspiracy and oh my god, and then the government came up with a lie, and then the government made people disappear and people show up again, how is he different from people believing in all of this shit that we've just seen? It's just, I would find it difficult if we have a character and he uncovers the perfect conspiracy. It's like the first episode of Stargate where, oh my god, we had aliens in the ancient world. I think that would not have been clever.
I mean, maybe it would have been clever because it would have confronted this issue of Sheridan's character head on, because
But with a success.
Yeah, that's the thing. You would have to tackle this properly and like have people around him still talk him down from this, because right now we are in this awkward spot where Sheridan did have this moment of, oh my god, the conspiracy I believed was true, and the only reason he's not going tinfoil hat nuts with that is that the prophetess Dylan told him not to, because there's an even higher conspiracy, but a good one. So he is kind of entangled.
No. Well, now you're actually entering a part that we cannot discuss yet without spoilers, but you are calling things a conspiracy, which I would not call a conspiracy. So there are different levels, and the plot that you have just described for Sheridan would have been just a conspiracy that people who wear tinfoil hats fall into, all those complete bullshit. And we would have written that as a true story, and that's the problem. While other things are not that kind of conspiracy that we still have to uncover.
I mean, what we uncover, be that as it may, but right now we have Sheridan being like, there is a guy from a ship that blew up and I need to like shackle him forever because that doesn't add up. There needs to be a big evil plan behind this. And then, you have Dylan with the mysterious Vorlon who never left his encounters, so telling him not to for reasons she can't explain to him fully yet. Like, this is why I'm speaking of this in terms of conspiracy. Whether or not that's actually true, we don't know. But, it's still eerily similar to him listening to voices in his head once Kosh beams knowledge into his brain. Like, that's still very questionable. I mean, you're completely right. Having him succeed in this would be opening this, would force us to reckon with this more, that he is kind of a conspiracy nut, and that's not actually a good thing. Like, it's a problem and not something that you want a commander of the station to really do.
Yes, or at least not a story that tells that as a positive thing when it so clearly isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But of course, this is a lot of if and when, and if they had written it differently, because nothing of this is happening in this episode.
I mean, the one thing that is happening is the commander being like, I love mysteries, and going on his own without any security detail in a dangerous part of the station, which I'm sure we can all agree on, not a great call.
Yes, and that we have this commander that is open for any kind of mysterious spiritual thing. And I think they wanted to put that forward without making it too much.
Yeah.
Because he is open for it, he's interested in it with any kind of spiritual argument, no matter if it's from Earth culture or from anywhere else. You can get him, you can convince him. But I also think that I said, okay, let's just stop here because he should not look like an idiot.
I mean, this is also, he does all this, he does his investigation, and when he finds an injured alien, he just calls, then an ambulance for them. Like, it's very clearly, he knows when to stop and be serious about this, which is important.
And Garibaldi saves the day, the captain, this time again. And I really liked his line when they were in MedLab. And yeah, I think it was the first checkup he got with Franklin. And yeah, Garibaldi in the background. Yeah, baby, you listen next time. I just tell you not to go.
I mean, in general, one of the things I really enjoy about this plot is how everyone is reacting to that, because you could very easily see this idea, oh, our main character is possessed by an alien entity, and now everybody will think that he's crazy, or he will have to hide this for a long time because he thinks nobody will take him seriously because, we have interpersonal drama around that. And here you really get to see, no, these are professionals. Like, if the captain sees something that shouldn't be there, he goes to the sick bay, and the doctor is like, I don't see any findings, but that doesn't mean there isn't anything there. We live in a sci-fi world. There are things that I can't explain. There are stress-induced things, so let me give you some advice. And so they work through this, I feel like, without a lot of extra drama that would have dragged out this plot longer than it needed to be. It's very straightforward.
I was really happy to see when it was like, I can't find anything, you rest, and yeah, maybe this and this is possible, even though I do not find anything. And yeah, how quickly they got to the idea of, okay, you could have caught something from this dead alien that is unknown, and don't find anything, therefore there is nothing.
Yeah. It's, if we live in a world with telepaths, you don't tell me that I'm being paranoid. Voices in my head are literally something real that can happen, so please treat it that way and not sell this short. So no, I was glad to see that. And yeah, I mean, as much of kind of a nothing burger this entire alien entity is, I do like that it's over relatively quickly. Like, there is not all that much, like, it's a very straightforward message that it's trying to send, and Sheridan isn't very stupid about that. He gets it, and yeah, I guess then it's over, and it's I don't know. I don't think we expect very many big consequences from something like that. It's just, gone now, and in 50 years we can send probably exploration probe through that rift, and that's going to be great, but probably not part of the show anymore.
Yeah, I think this is all there is to say about the Sheridan plot here. Which is, since it's not that big and didn't get that much time, the big main stage is for Londo and his his friend, though I really would like to give a little bit of time for Lando and Veer right in the beginning of this episode, stepping out of I think an elevator or a conference room or whatever, and discuss music and get to the point of singing some sort of aria or something from an opera together.
It was an absolute highlight, and I think very needed, because their relationship has been incredibly strained, because it's always about having to interact with Mr. Morton and stuff. But here we get to see they've spent a lot of time together, and on a personal level, these are good friends, or they could be good friends. They have completely different opinions about which composer is the better one, but they do appreciate the art of it, and they just have fun celebrating that. And yeah, opera for aliens, Klingon opera, Narn opera is kind of a trope, but it never felt more natural than for Centauri.
Yes. I think it's interesting, especially what kind of opera they had been choosing, that this really reminds of the 18th century, of all of this kind of classical music, and then it really felt like you had some rich Italians singing their pieces there. That fit the picture very, very well. That was nice.
I think for me it also helps, and throughout this entire episode, Centauri fundamentally look very goofy with their giant hair, and that's something that, especially in the first season, you kind of have to get over. But once you throw in something like an operatic aria, as impressive as it is on a technical level, it's also something that, like, at first glance always looks and sounds a little bit silly. Like, there is just something slightly goofy about the attire, about the garishness of the outfits, about the melodrama of every story that is being told. And for me, this binds it all together, where I can, if I'm fine with the coats and with the jewelry and the revelry and everything, then honestly, the hair isn't that much crazier than a historical hair they would have worn in this era. So honestly, it feels very natural now.
Yes, and the entrance here of Lando's friend,
yes,
quite an interesting one, because at first I really thought, okay, now I don't know, Jacquard or anyone from the Narn just was fed up and okay, we kill this bastard now. But no, it is his friend.
Ursa.
Which is quite an interesting name, I think.
It's great. It once again fits the style very well, I believe.
And what do you think about these two?
This is one of the few times where I'm pretty sure I do remember my very first watch impression, where I also completely got by this moment and thought, oh, this is going to be an assassination plot of some kind, which, yeah, it is, but not in the way you think, so that misdirection really worked out. It reminds me a lot of Dral coming to the station for the first time and having this, immediately fall back into them talking about the times they had in their youth, and having the slang of their fencing or dueling society, their own little nicknames, and reciting lessons from back in the day and such. I think they did a really good job portraying this kind of familiarity, where you immediately get the sense of, okay, these guys know each other for a long time. I buy this friendship immediately.
Yes, and I really like the energy of these two, because in the beginning it's like, they really align, and then you have this kind of breaking point where Ursa is telling this whole, there were people killing the prime minister and stuff like that. And honestly, that was, for me, the point where I really like the episode, because we have a Centauri here that is strongly going against, the main direction of the Centauri, or at least what is presented as such so far. And even the he's saying, like, the Narn didn't start the war out of their own interest because they had to. We made them do this. And to have this opinion presented by someone else than Veer, if it would have been Veer, it would have been nice, but it wouldn't have the same impact we get from Ursa here because he is such a good friend of Londo.
Yes, I think it adds a whole different dimension because he's a friend of Londo's. He is somebody of high status, so we get to see, oh no, it's not that the Centauri have some dissent among the general populace because the evil elites are against them, this very generic thing. Like, no, there are people of nobility, people who are heroes of that golden age that Londo always talks about. Just Ursa himself says, I'm old hero, and the things I get called a hero for still haunt me. Like, this is not somebody being like, oh, this course is very dangerous for the Centauri now, or I have some personal issues with that, or even just, my ethical sense of morality is injured by this. Like, no, this is somebody who has lived a life as part of the Centauri Republic and is thoroughly convinced this is the wrong way to go for an entire lifetime of experience worth, which, I mean, we implicitly sort of knew these people must exist because we had Emperor Turhan who represented them, but here we really get to see, no, what Londo is doing isn't what all the Centauri want. There is an entire, once again, conspiracy going on where people get assassinated, people get, for false reason dragged into court and executed for treason and things like that. Like, this is a fringe movement that is taking over from the inside there, and Ursa is actually putting together like this entire banquet and stuff as an attempt to move against this, as an attempt to build an opposition to this.
Yes, I mean, what this shows, this change in the Centauri society that we've seen so far, definitely shows that society in general is always this pluralistic something where you have a lot of different opinions and you have a lot of different groups, and if everything goes well, if there's a time where there's no big problem, then usually these opinions can kind of exist next to each other. But of course, when there's a lot of pressure, or also depending on who is in the position of power, and these processes of who comes into the position of power are complex, and you sometimes cannot predict them, then it can happen that a few of them are not accepted anymore, or are even not allowed anymore, and that can happen, and it can sometimes even be very, very the change that happens in these power positions does not always represent the majority of the people, or the opinion of the majority. It is a very, very abstract and complex process, and here we have seen this shift, definitely, and that is interesting, because of course we know that these people exist, these people with the opinion, like Veer has them, or like, what is his name?
Ursa
has them. But we see that no matter how many people may even share them, at this point it's a problem because of a certain, maybe even smaller group of people who has climbed up a certain career ladder.
I mean, we even get to see one of the big weaknesses of this super, centralized imperial kind of politicking system that the Centauri have, where, anytime an emperor dies, you have a succession crisis of some sort. This is like one of the fundamental flaws with this kind of system, where this kind of backstabbing Game of Thrones style attempt to gain power by all means necessary is kind of programmed in, because there isn't really a system for peaceful transition of power between like regular intervals, which just makes this problem so much worse.
I would like to go back to what you said before, Alex, about that Ursa as a hero is just haunted by his heroic acts. And there was I already made the connection between him and Veer, because they have, I would consider the same direction of thoughts. And I was really, really glad about a certain line Veer implemented earlier, I think. That is, why make history if you fail to learn by it? I really, really love this phrasing in this episode, and maybe it just kicks harder right now because it matches way too much things in reality. But I think this is a really strong and great line that goes completely under in this situation. because Lando is like, no, we're not talking about this.
I mean, one of the big tragedies is that we don't get to see Vir and Ursa really interact at all, because we know they would have got along great, and if they could sit together and really have a talk about, okay, Londo is taking a wrong path here, how do we get him out of this? I'm sure they would have come up with something, but the status difference between the two is so big that Ursa never really addresses Vir at all when they're in the same room. They are just not, society is so far apart that they just don't register with each other, which is just a shame.
And it's straight out stupid, because of the both of them have the same kind of energy. I would totally agree. If these two would have the chance to go together and work something out, it would have an enormous impact on Lando, on Centauri. Therefore, too really, really bad what is happening then, that gets to the point of Ursa challenging Lando to a duel after, what was it? Getting to know that he is in the same party as Refa, who is the one. He's not the one who killed the prime minister, but
he's organizing all of this, which I think is one of the few times Londo really struck me as naive in this political game, that he didn't put together these nuts, because Refa straight up told him about a plan like this when Emperor Turhan was dying, where he was like, we have people in place, you're gonna give this speech and they're gonna make sure that all your predictions come true and then we get to power. Like, he knows that this is what Refa does. This isn't news to him. So if a friend of a venerated house comes to him and tells him, for some reason we are marked as traitors now, I did. Londo, you should have known better that probably the issue is on your side, but I think this just speaks to the fact...
Actually, in his position.
Yeah, right?
It's not like he is someone unimportant anymore, at least.
His star is rising once again, like even Ursa says, but I think this just plays into a little bit of this illusion that Londo has, that he is just doing everything in the interest of the people, and Ursa is good people, so why would anything that Londo does ever harm him? Like, he tells himself that to some degree, and I think it is a wake-up call where Londo even says in this episode, okay, I guess I gotta talk to the spies that I have back home, because I haven't been paying much attention, and now there's suddenly massive shifts in power going on, which probably is a bad thing.
I also think that he is not only naive in the way or in the sense of not knowing things. I think he's also naive completely in the direction he's going. He is moving in this power schematics. He is gaining power, and it feels like he is not taking any precautions. Like, nothing will happen to me. Like I'm invincible. Nothing can harm me. That feels like that's his right.
But I mean, we are talking about a guy who has, like all Centauri have, a very clear vision of how he's going to die, which is being, much, much older, something 20 years ago, I think he said, back in season 1 when we first got to see some of these visions. So it makes sense to me that he would have this kind of mindset of inevitability where he says, well, I know there's a path laid out before me, I just have to follow it, which is the only justification he even gives Ursa. And I think part of that is that he has the strong belief that what he's doing is preordained history, and history will just have a way of working themselves out. I feel like this also speaks to the solution that Londo has, where he still clings to this image of the old republic, and he clings to this idea, well, okay, all of this is happening is tragic now, but thank God we have a rule for what happens to the family of the loser, and so now through this duel, as tragic as this is, I can secure the family of my good friend. So I think this is where he's coming from. In the end, things work out because there's rules for that. He shouldn't be taking precautions. It's all already written.
Yeah, which is also a big problem. I mean, of course, I can understand where this is coming from. Since this whole vision, I know who will kill me, how I will die. It is like, yeah, the fate is determined, but and that is his overall excuse.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I can't do anything. What will happen, and yeah, therefore he is taking himself out of
any kind of responsibility, I guess.
Responsibility was the word I was searching for. Yes, thanks. Exactly. He is completely like, yeah, I can't do anything. It's like, yeah, being passive completely, which is, of course, fitting for his depression and everything. We discussed so far of his mental state, but also a reason why he will not get out of this. If you don't change the mindset of being passive, yeah, I don't see any hope so far.
And I think this is the shame that we see him with Ursa so late, because Ursa is also pushed into this corner where he really doesn't have any options anymore, so he can't really pull Londo out of this. If we're already talking about Londo's depression, I think a big factor of this comes up. Adira gets a mention in this episode, yes, which is nice that Londo remembers, but also, yeah, he talks about this, well, it went as love always goes, tragically and badly, which also sounds like he has just resigned himself to the fact that, yeah, it's gone, it's terrible. Which is a shame, because she's still out there, like she's waiting for him. So he once again, he could get proactive and maybe try and seek her out. It's been a year now, so maybe it's better.
I don't know. I always thought that this meant that they had been in touch probably, and she's just still not up for it. She still needs her freedom, and she still needs to be out there, and that's how I understood it, because she was very determined to get away from him and to not get into this kind of relationship. So I think that was what he was referring to.
I think, yeah, if she learns about his star rising in the Republic, that only makes it harder for her to come back. Like,
I have one question. When they were talking about wife and love and stuff like that, it at least felt to be, maybe it was just wish thinking, but that the relationship that Ursa has with at least the mentioned wife, that they have some sort of good relationship.
It felt...
I mean, I would explain that to myself, that even within such a system, of course, you can have people who get married and fall in love, or people who manage to get married although they are in love. So that definitely sounded like that. But he also had several, right? So he has one wife that he's in love with, another wife that he plays the system through with. And so I also saw that as this contrast to Londo, and also maybe even as a personal reminder to Londo that you have this system, you have all of this marriage contracts and policies and whatever, but within that system you still have people who keep their, and I don't want to sound too, but to keep their humanity, their emotions and their personality alive, and even within this rigid, strange system find places for that. And I think you have that in whatever weird society you look into, you always have that. And yeah, so we only have Londo who kind of didn't do that.
Yes, exactly. That's the point I wanted to go to, because, yeah, they origin from the same part of the society. I mean, it's like again and again, Lando is saying, "Oh yeah, our houses go back to the beginning of this republic." But the big difference between both of them is, apart from the mindset, which is probably the reason why they go into different directions. And Ursa is trying to make it work somehow in this system. And Lando is just like, yeah, I live in this system and I resign to this system and I just exist, but I don't live. And that's, at least it kind of feels in this few informations we get, as a contrast to Lando existing and living.
Yes, he would always point out how the system works and how he's just existing within it, right? And just this is the system and this is how it works and this is what happened and this is how it goes. Always in this kind of that is cynical. I'm allowed to call that cynical, right? Because we had that discussion recently. Always in this cynical way, and not even looking for these windows, these spaces for himself. Yes, I agree with that.
I personally didn't even get all that much impression that Ursa and his wife are necessarily in love. To me, it more sounded like, yeah, we had our arranged marriage and we're good friends now. And we've arranged ourselves this. It feels very pragmatic. And I just point this out because for me, part of Londo's problem is that what he looks up to is the fairy tale version of, the Centauri Republic. So what he's imagining is that, you have the princess and you have the prince and they get together because, of course, it's an arranged marriage, but they're also madly in love. And he never got over this thing that, he gets so bitter about his wives because it's not an amazing love story for the 12th time that he gets married to one of them out of purely necessity reasons, where somebody like Ursa feels like, yeah, maybe he just accepted that love wasn't the point of this marriage, but got along with the person at least, found some kind of arrangement, found a window to find some kind of happiness in that, which is probably also possible. And we see this is something you can do, but of course also with the reminder that this is probably why House Ursa is left vulnerable enough to be branded as traitors in the end here.
Yes, but that you can also use to argue that he managed to get a marriage deal with someone that he loved and is therefore left more vulnerable because he didn't marry the most prestigious person that he could get to. So both options are definitely there.
Absolutely.
Just what gets me this idea is that after this talk of we arranged, she understands, we arranged whatever, and then he is talking about love, like to Londo, you didn't find, and this it feels like a subtext to me of this relationship he has, at least with this wife, is more than just the typical arranged marriage. If it's just good friends, if it's friends, if it is love, I wouldn't think it matters that much because it's just so much better of a quality relationship than anything that Londo has.
And I think we can extend this to basically everything that we see of Ursa here, because it all kind of feels like the positive example of what Londo always talks about. We saw what a big Centauri banquet looks like from Londo's perspective, and he threw the big party in the Parliament of Dreams where he's dancing on the table, getting blackout drunk while celebrating the genocide of the second sentient species on their planet, where it immediately has this like, it's super garish, it's kind of desperately like this super hedonistic cult. And then we see a banquet thrown by Ursa, and honestly, it seems kind of nicer. It's a little bit more subdued. It's still, 19th century kind of, imperial silliness happening, but you can more see why somebody would enjoy that. You have this entire, Londo always calling somebody my dear old great friend and being super jovial with everyone. And it kind of always has this very political feel to it. And with Ursa, I can see that he actually has dear good friends. Down to the fact that Londo always talks about our Centauri society is all about masks. And if I look behind my mask, I don't know if anything is there. And then we see the dueling society where they give each other cool nicknames because they have a certain fighting style. And suddenly I can see how this system would work, how even this idea of taking on masks, taking on titles and building yourself up from that, how the positive version of this looks. And I get this sense that the reason Londo doesn't have any of that isn't because the golden days of the Centauri Republic are gone. He just kind of sucks at these things. He's just kind of an outcast. And not necessarily through his own fault. He might have just been also under very bad circumstances. But yeah, Ursa is kind of the successful version of him. And that's a contrast to see.
Maybe I'm going a bit too far here, but to make a good connection, to create a good relationship, everyone has to put in something into like the pot of this relationship. And part of this is that you allow yourself to be vulnerable, so you can be seen as who you are. And maybe this is just an over proportion of the information we get about Ursa, but it feels like, for me, like Ursa is the one who is able, at least a bit, to show this vulnerability. Know what I
Close enough.
I'm not trying to say that again. It's late. But this, which could be also the problem why he got into this state of being called a traitor. And I haven't seen Londo really doing this with anyone. Maybe a little tidbit with Veer, with Adira, but on the other hand, she doesn't really gave them room so far to really, engage on the same level with him. Of course, ranks were, but I think you get overall what I mean. This level of interaction.
Yeah, I think it's telling how much he is only able to do this with people that aren't on a similar status as him, when this like imposed rivalry can't exist. And how much of a strain that is as soon as he learns that Veer might also be emperor one day. Like immediately this equivalency between them creates immediate tension. Do we want to talk about Londo and Refa's interaction? Because it's brief, but it might also be kind of telling.
Well, it's interesting. Refa is like, well, if you want to do this for him, but of course this will have an effect on you, and I can't. Of course I will try, but I'm so sorry. I'm not sure if I can help you. It's really pretentious, and of course in the same moment, I mean, he really says maybe you are not fitting in the prescription of your job in our group, and it's a power struggle, and honestly I'm not really sure if either of them really made an impact there or get out of there as a winner.
I think ultimately Refa does, because I feel like he just knows what will happen as soon as Ursa finds out that Londo told him. I think he's just kind of banking on them self-destructing with each other. But for me, the most memorable thing about this is just how much Refa has kind of emerged as this like clandestine force within the Centauri, where he doesn't really take Londo all too seriously, even when Londo, goes about who made your success possible and such. Like, Refa doesn't seem particularly impressed that Londo has some associates that can make military outposts disappear. And I don't take Refa as somebody stupid enough to not know about this. I think he just has his own calculations of power in there, or at least knows in the context of the courts of Centauri, he will be able to get rid of Londo no matter what. And maybe the next assassination attempt is going to be much more real than the one Ursa launched. So I like that he manages to come off as vaguely threatening to somebody like Londo, when Londo really had a massive trump card up his sleeve up to this point.
Yeah, what I would really be interested in is what Refa is thinking about Londo and his power or his possible powers. Because, there was the destruction of Narn and their planets and everything. And, I mean, somehow did this happen. And maybe Londo is just claiming that he did something, but maybe he really did something. And I don't know how you could... maybe I'm just not good enough with
at overthrowing governments.
Overthrowing government. No, with this kind of strategic thinking. But what do you think is going through his head, or is there nothing going on at all? Maybe.
I think I mean, the techno mages, who are always wise people to turn to, the techno mages said to Londo, essentially, if I kill you now, somebody else will take your place. And I think that's basically what Refa's thinking is as well, is if I kill Londo, whatever he has, whatever allowed him to do these things, is probably going to come to me, and I will be able to utilize this. I think he has just such confidence that Londo is not all that smart, that he figures whatever Londo was doing, I can probably do better. And given where they stand, I can kind of get where Refa is coming from, because Londo didn't really have a super successful career up to this point. So, yeah, maybe there's something to that. But yeah, I think it's just this your typical Saruman self-confidence of saying, the Dark Lord is not all that important. Whatever he uses, I can use better, and I will just utilize this power to my own end. That feels like typical Refa thinking to me.
I like this reference.
Any other points on this? Otherwise, I have one last section that I would like to talk about.
Go ahead.
Well, the last few times we saw alien fighting, it was the Minbari fighting stances, which you, Meike, weren't terribly impressed with. We had the Mutai, which I think nobody ever was very impressed with, except for a rare few. I have to say, the entire dueling club idea and the fight that they have worked pretty well for me. I especially like how the Pasoleati, the titles, the nicknames, the terminology is kind of naturally woven into everything, where I get a sense that there is some kind of other language happening here that I just don't need explained to me. I like little tidbits, like the announcer for the duel saying, like, draw your blades with purpose. That just immediately has all the implication. Yeah, if you have a dueling society, of course you would have rules like, if you draw your blade, you should have an intention with that and declare that intention and properly, conduct everything, because it can't be a free-for-all, and otherwise it's just going to be murder, not a duel. So all of these things, that there's preparation time, the little vests that they use, the blades that they use, I think as far as a TV show portraying aliens fighting, that worked very well for me. As a climax of this episode, I can live with that quite happily. How about you?
The overall conception of this is really good. It everything was fitting. Of course, the fight itself. I mean, they had a good idea. I'm not sure. It was a bit of fencing, then mixed with, I don't know, some other sort fighting or martial arts. I'm not sure what this mixture it was. The problem for me was that it lacked energy. Like, yeah, the actors, they were trying to make it work, but the problem is if you have this kind of fight, you need, like, something impressive in the sense of it has to be quick, or that someone is making a strong swipe with a sword, or doing something that is technically really impressive. But overall, they were just like, I hit you with my sword, and therefore it lacked energy. There was I'm not sure how in the when this was produced, how the overall production was, or how they prepared for this. But for me it felt like, okay, they gave two people that never held a sword in their life, told them, yeah, hold it like this, and maybe not like this, and then try to make some sequence, and that's it. Maybe just pampered with the modern stuff, but
I'm inclined to say yes, at least remembering, watching some very considered very masterfully done, like 80s and 90s big movie productions where the fighting sometimes feels slow-ish by modern standards. But I mean, my main frame of reference is something we've been recently watching, Stargate Atlantis, where they've got a lot of stick fighting going on, and they had like a dedicated stunt crew and instructors and people who professionally do this kind of thing, which you can tell because they utilize these sparring matches every other episode to get their money's worth out of it. And then it looks, you know, fast and impactful and still kind of goofy when it tries to be very serious. But, you know, it doesn't stand out as much. For production like Babylon 5, I really have a hard time imagining how they would do it. But you're completely right that, you know, you feel it, you see it, and it you know, it's not gonna win prizes.
Their body stature. There it's with Ursa it's okay-ish with at least one eye closed, but Londo is the problem. His body is not saying I have physically worked out. He is having like this hunched posture when he is standing. Maybe this is his natural stature.
It's also tentacles. He just can't.
Yeah, but Ursa on the count,
having
a bit broader stature and holding his back straight, and it Londo is kind of looking slouchy. I'm not sure really how to describe this, but the little bits I remember from fencing is like, yeah, your posture is everything, because you have to protect your attack points. You have to give the least bit of exposure to your body and give with the least amount of energy the biggest impact. It's a lot of min-maxing.
Yeah.
And even, I know this is not supposed to be fencing here, but this is usually something you do with any kind of fighting, making a really small target and using less energy to get the big things out. And there is no feeling of this at all in this fight, and therefore it's with not Dylan, Linear. This whole strange hand posture, this is working because it's so different from any realistic thing. Therefore, you can say it doesn't matter how you stand, but if you're getting closer to the realistic thing that we have,
that's definitely a drawback.
It's problematic. Then you're not buying into it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have looked at them, and I've actually just seen this dueling as a kind of tradition they are aware of, not as a sport any of them is good at.
But I mean, they...
Can I finish maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And so it looked more like now they're doing this dueling, and they're not doing it for the first time. They definitely know how it works. They have maybe even gotten some training in that at some point, and one of them maybe more than the other. But definitely they're not doing it because they're good. And I think this lacking of energy also kind of fit, because I mean they were in it, and they were actually doing it, and they were executing it seriously. But it was also kind of obviously that Londo did not really want to kill him, but also kind of had to kill him, because otherwise he would have killed him. He would have killed Londo. And I mean, and Ursa. God, his name I will never. Ursa, on the other hand, went into it and wanted to die. So it was. I don't know. It wasn't really fighting to survive. It was like a weird execution of their old tradition to get their way.
I still think they were supposed to be good at it, because that was the entire point of their dueling society. Like, this is what they spent the youth doing. So,
but they're not young anymore.
I mean, nobody expects, Londo to be absolutely ripped once he, pulls off his coat and revealing, oh my god, I've been working out all this time. But, the Meike describes it. it would have been nice to see him, kind of pull himself up into a proper pose. And this is one of these things where conceptually I really like what Londo says here, where he says, I know that in this duel, as a sport, I've never been as good as Ursa, but my life was never on the line. And, in an ideal world, we would have gotten really good fighting stances that not only feel realistic, but then also communicate that Ursa is fighting very much by the book, whereas Londo is just going all out because he knows his life is on the line, or at least wants to make it look good. Which I think this is definitely where the production value kind of falls short. But yeah, I do like in the end that it is telegraphed so clearly that Ursa hesitates to let Londo get this final blow in, because I think there is very much, like you mentioned, Layla, this point where it doesn't matter whether or not this feels like a fair conclusion. That also doesn't matter to all the onlookers, because they understand what the purpose of this match is, and there it's a foregone conclusion.
Little bit from the background, I really liked weird, like, oh, no, I don't want to watch. No, it's still alive.
The implication that this is a tradition that the younger generation does not appreciate.
Yes. But okay, I think we exhausted this episode so far.
Pretty well, yeah. Thank you.
You're no longer part of the podcast.
I got ejected. But no, I think for this dueling, for this plot, this does it fairly well. We've got some big episodes coming up, but this was a nice and sweet and short one. We've talked about an hour about it now, which I think is completely fair for Knives. All right, for today in the episode Knives, this does it for us. As you might have noticed, we are ditching the latter sections of our discussions recently because we are mainly concerned with getting something out in time, which in part is also part of a revamp. I'm slowly working my way through doing some more custom background animations for us. We've been talking about doing the tapestry as a separate season ender special and things like that. So as we move through season 2 and towards season 3, we are going to reformat things a little bit so that everything works better and on time. Nevertheless, we will be back next week with Confessions and Lamentations. Layla is already very excited for this episode, whether she knows it or not. But until then, you can find us on all the regular social media networks, on Facebook, Mastodon, Twitter, Instagram even, but of course here on YouTube.
We're the cutest because here you can see us.
Hope you enjoyed the episode, and until next time.